In some places, a police officer is basically a heavily armed soldier fighting a daily urban war. In others, they are essentially neighborhood social workers who aren't even allowed to carry a gun. Some systems are funded by massive federal budgets, while others rely entirely on local property taxes. Some can kick your door down without asking, while others need a judge's permission just to look in your car. Let's start by looking at a country where the line between peace officer and soldier is increasingly blurred. The United States of America. You are driving down a dark stretch of Interstate 95. Your tail light is out, and suddenly red and blue lights flash in your rearview mirror. You pull over. You immediately roll down your window, turn on the interior dome light, and put both your hands firmly on the top of the steering wheel. Why? Because you know the officer walking up to your window is armed with a 9mm handgun, and his hand is resting near his holster. To understand American policing, you have to realize that there is no American police force. The system is radically decentralized. There are roughly 18,000 completely independent police departments. If you are in a city, you are policed by municipal cops like the NYPD. If you cross the city line into the county, you are policed by a sheriff who is uniquely an elected politician. Get on the highway and you are under the jurisdiction of state troopers. Because they are largely funded by local city and county property taxes, the quality of policing creates a zip code lottery. A wealthy suburban department might have millions of dollars for state-of-the-art training and armored vehicles, while a rural department is paying officers minimum wage to drive broken-down cruisers. Legally, their powers are defined by the Fourth Amendment. They cannot search your car without a warrant or probable cause, but in practice, courts have granted them immense leeway, including Terry stops, stop and frisk, if they reasonably suspect you are armed. Furthermore, American police unions are some of the most powerful political entities in the country. They passionately defend a legal doctrine called qualified immunity, which makes it incredibly difficult to personally sue an officer for violating your civil rights. The result is a highly fragmented, heavily armed force that fatally shoots roughly 1,000 people a year. If you want to see a system built entirely on centralized community trust, you just have to look across the Atlantic to the United Kingdom. You are standing outside a crowded pub in London. A drunken scuffle breaks out between two men. Within minutes, a metropolitan police officer arrives. He walks right into the middle of the fight. You look at his belt, there is no gun. He has a high-vis yellow vest, a radio, a baton, and pepper spray. Using a calm, authoritative voice, he talks the men down and diffuses the situation. This is the British concept of policing by consent. The philosophy states that police power comes from the public's approval, not the raw power of the state. Unlike the US's 18,000 departments, England and Wales are streamlined into just 43 regional constabularies, funded by a mix of local council taxes and a massive central grant from the National Home Office. Because over 90% of frontline British officers are unarmed, they rely heavily on the Police and Criminal Evidence Act PACE. This strict law governs exactly how they can search or arrest you. They can stop and search you in the street if they have reasonable grounds to suspect you are carrying weapons or drugs, but every search must be meticulously documented and recorded on body cameras. British police unions, the Police Federation, are essentially lobbying groups. By law, British police officers are actually forbidden from going on strike. So how do you heavily arm a police force but ensure they almost never pull the trigger? You travel to Germany. You are sitting in a modern police academy classroom in Berlin. You aren't learning how to breach a door. Instead, you are studying constitutional law, psychology, and de-escalation tactics. German policing operates on a federal level, divided primarily into the Landespolizei state police, who handle daily crime, and the Bundespolizei federal police, who handle borders and terrorism. Funded entirely by robust state and federal budgets, the training is arguably the best in the world. To get a badge, you must complete a rigorous university-level degree taking 2.5 to 3 years. Their powers are strictly limited by the Constitution's emphasis on Menschenwürde, or human dignity. An officer generally cannot search you or your home without a strict judicial warrant, unless there is imminent danger and delay. Jeffar im Verzug. Even their police union, the GDP, focuses heavily on better training and psychological support rather than just shielding officers from liability. The statistics speak for themselves. In an entire year, policing 83 million people, the entire German police force might fire fewer than 50 bullets at suspects. If Germany is about restrained armament, Norway takes de-escalation to an absolute extreme. You are walking through a snowy plaza in Oslo when a man starts aggressively screaming at pedestrians. A police car pulls up. The officers get out to confront him, but you notice something incredible. They have guns, but the guns are securely locked inside a safe bolted to the inside of the patrol car. Norway operates a single, highly centralized national police service funded directly by the national government. To access their weapon, an officer must radio the chief of police and get explicit real-time permission to unlock the safe. They cannot arbitrarily search you. Their powers of arrest and search are deeply restricted to prevent any abuse of state power. This requires intense education, a 3-year bachelor's degree, and produces incredible public trust. But this ultra-pacifist approach has a terrifying cultural tax. During the tragic 2011 Utoya Island terrorist attack, the local police response was heavily criticized as being fatally slow because of this rigid bureaucratic chain of command regarding firearms. Now let's leave the quiet streets of Scandinavia and look at a country where the police are fighting a literal daily urban war. Brazil. You are navigating the steep, labyrinth-like alleys of a favela in Rio de Janeiro. Suddenly, the sound of heavy diesel engines echoes off the brick walls. A black armored personnel carrier, known as a Caveiro Big Skull, rolls up the hill. Officers dressed entirely in black jump out, holding military-grade assault rifles. Brazilian policing is bizarrely split into two main branches. The military police, who do street patrols and wear uniforms, and the civil police, who wear plain clothes and do detective work. Funded by state governments, they are often severely underpaid, which historically breeds deep corruption. In theory, Brazilian police need a warrant to enter a home. In reality, when dealing with the favelas, which are often controlled by heavily armed drug cartels, the police operate under a state of quasi-urban warfare. They frequently conduct massive military-style raids where the concept of probable cause goes out the window. Brazilian police are responsible for thousands of civilian and suspect deaths every year, operating with a shoot first, ask questions later mentality. If Brazil's state police are overwhelmed by cartels, South Africa's state police are overwhelmed by something else entirely: the free market. You are waking up in a middle-class home in Johannesburg. You hear a window shatter downstairs. You do not dial 10,111 for the national police. Instead, you reach over and press a silent panic button next to your bed. Within 2 minutes, a private, heavily armed corporate security team arrives at your front gate. The South African Police Service, SAPS, is a massive national entity, but it is famously underfunded, severely understaffed, and plagued by internal corruption. Because the state cannot guarantee safety, privatization took over. In South Africa, private security officers outnumber official public police by a staggering ratio of roughly 4-to-1. Funded entirely by monthly subscriptions from wealthy citizens and businesses, these private armies have no more legal power than a regular citizen. They rely on citizens' arrest laws. Yet they patrol with assault rifles and armored trucks. It is a system of absolute inequality. The rich buy private paramilitary protection, while the poor rely on an underfunded state force, frequently leading to brutal vigilante mob justice in impoverished townships. Let's travel from the privatization of Africa to the sprawling, chaotic scale of India. You are caught in a massive, surging crowd during a religious festival in Mumbai. The crowd begins to push dangerously. Suddenly, a line of police officers steps forward. They aren't holding riot shields. They are holding lathis, long, heavy bamboo sticks. They swing them in unison, striking the ground and occasionally the legs of the crowd to physically push the mass of humanity back. India's policing structure is a direct legacy of the British Empire's Police Act of 1861, which was originally designed not to serve the public, but to control the masses. Policing is a state subject, meaning each of India's 28 states funds and runs its own force, led by elite, federally trained officers from the Indian Police Service, IPS. The legal powers of Indian police are vast. Under various sections of the law, they can arrest individuals without a warrant for a wide range of cognizable offenses. In some conflict-heavy regions, police are granted sweeping powers to search premises and detain suspects indefinitely. Because state budgets are tight, the average street constable is severely underpaid, works 14-hour shifts, and lacks basic forensic technology. This immense power combined with low pay makes bribery a chronic issue and has led to the controversial practice of encounters, extrajudicial police killings of gangsters when the slow court system fails. While India manages its scale through human manpower, China manages its massive scale through the ultimate technological filter: artificial intelligence. You are walking down a busy intersection in Beijing. You're in a hurry, so you decide to jaywalk across the street. You look around, you don't see a single police officer, but a block later your phone buzzes. It's a text message from the government. It contains a high-resolution photo of your face, a notice that you have been fined for jaywalking, and an alert that the money has already been deducted from your digital bank account. In China, the police are the Ministry of Public Security, a colossal, heavily funded arm of the Central Communist Party. They do not have independent unions. They are the literal enforcers of the state. Their legal power is virtually absolute. While the law technically requires warrants for arrests, in practice, for anything deemed a threat to national security or social stability, the police can detain you instantly. They utilize residential surveillance at a designated location, RSDL, allowing them to hold suspects in secret locations for up to 6 months without access to a lawyer. Combined with Skynet, a network of hundreds of millions of AI facial recognition cameras, the Chinese police have achieved incredibly low rates of street crime, but at the cost of total dystopian surveillance. If you want to see a society that achieves incredibly low crime without AI surveillance, You look to Japan. You are walking home in Tokyo and realize you lost your wallet. You don't go to a massive police precinct. You walk up to a koban, a tiny one-room police box nestled between a ramen shop and an apartment building. The officer inside offers you tea and helps you log the lost item. Japan operates under the National Police Agency, which sets the budget and standards, while prefectural regional police execute the patrols. Because violent crime is exceedingly rare, Japanese cops spend their days doing microscopic community policing. But beneath this friendly exterior is a deeply rigid, psychologically intense justice system. Japanese police have immense legal leverage. If they suspect you of a crime, they can legally hold you in Daiyo Kangoku substitute prisons for up to 23 days without officially charging you. During these 23 days, they do not need a warrant to interrogate you from morning to night, and you do not have the right to have a lawyer present during questioning. This system produces Japan's famous 99.9% conviction rate, but human rights groups highly criticize it as hostage justice. Finally, we travel to France, a country that views the police not just as public servants, but as the literal shield of the republic. You are standing near the Champs-Élysées in Paris during a massive labor strike. Some protesters start throwing cobblestones. Instantly, the air fills with thick white tear gas. Advancing down the boulevard like a Roman legion is the CRS, France's elite, heavily armored riot police. France has a highly centralized system divided into the national police, who police the cities, and the gendarmerie, who are literally a branch of the French armed forces policing rural areas. They are funded entirely by the national government. French police have incredibly broad powers. Under ongoing anti-terrorism laws, officers can conduct widespread identity checks and stop-and-search operations without probable cause in designated areas. Furthermore, French police unions like Alliance are aggressively powerful. Because France has a massive protest culture, the government heavily relies on the police to maintain order. In return, the police unions frequently threaten to strike or halt patrols if politicians attempt to restrict their legal protections or use of force policies. The result is a heavily armed, highly capable force that frequently clashes violently with its own citizens. A country's police force is essentially a mirror. It reflects a society's deepest fears, its greatest hopes, and its ultimate values. America values decentralized authority and firepower. The UK values public consent. Germany values constitutional dignity. Norway values pacifism. Brazil values ruthless survival. South Africa proves what happens when safety becomes a private commodity. India relies on sheer endurance and colonial structures. China values absolute technological control. Japan values societal harmony through psychological pressure. And France values the uncompromising authority of the state. None of them have the perfect answer, because there is no perfect way to grant a human being the power of violence. Now that you've seen the spectrum, if you were in danger or accused of a crime, which of these 10 police systems do you want dealing with you and why? Let me know down in the comments.